Now, if you want to understand how to rebuild your self-esteem, you got to understand the first thing that destroys self-esteem. And the first place that everyone's self-esteem is absolutely destroyed, and the number one obstacle is What is up, my dear friends, and welcome back to another episode of Honey, I'm Home. Today, we're going to be talking about the three things that's killing your current self-esteem and what's leading you to feeling a lot more unhappier than you truly want to be. So if happiness is a goal of yours and it's something you want to achieve and fulfill, well, today we're going to be talking about the three killers, because sometimes I feel like you got to learn what is making you unhappy to figure out what can make you happy. Sometimes you got to know what to do and what not to do. So we're going to be focusing on a little bit of both, but if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you some practical instructional steps that you can begin to take so that you can begin to pick yourself up. And why do I feel like I can talk to you about this today is because ultimately I once was a very unhappy and depressed child. And I didn't have it super easy growing up, and I don't think easy is the goal. I think what is the goal is building a character within yourself that can achieve a greater level of competency that can help you to build your confidence to overcome and thrive in struggling times and situations, because life is nothing but, hardship, and it's a matter of building the character you need to become so that you can overcome that. That's what a true leader is. We want a strong leader in our homes, in our country, in our career paths, in our businesses, leading us into our churches. We want a strong leader that has been through trial and adversity that can actually lead through difficult times. I think that's what makes a great leader is someone who can actually be in the midst of chaos and still be able to be progressing their life, their family, their company forward. So today we're going to be talking about what do leaders look like, especially when they have a higher self-esteem, and what you can begin to do today so that you can build a higher self-esteem and create some happiness. I know that I'm excited for this one, and I hope you are too. But before we dive into today's episode, my dear friend, welcome to Honey, I'm Home. This podcast has been going for 2+ years now, and I'm so grateful that you're here. It's been tops of the charts in personal development and self-help. So I'm excited that you're here and you continuously show up for me. And if there's one thing that I could ask you to do, just as a friend, it would be simply to leave a review on the podcast app, wherever you listen to the podcast, because the reviews are what helps this podcast reach more homes and more hearts to help change lives and, hopefully to help change your life. But so today, let's talk about the three obstacles that are currently killing your self-esteem. When I dive into a topic like this, I always like to think about the word that I'm focusing in on, and today we're talking about self-esteem. So if you want to understand what's killing it, you first need to know what self-esteem is. And the definition of self-esteem is your overall sense of personal worth and self-value. A lot of people want to build up their self-worth, but they don't know really what that means. What does it mean to build your self-worth? Well, what is self-worth and where does it come from? To me, self-worth is your personal worth, or the value you give to yourself. Do you feel as though you're valuable? Do you believe that you have something worth sharing with someone else, to your family, friends, or to the world? Do you believe that your life has meaning? Do you believe that your life has value? Do you believe that you have a significant personal worth in this daily walk of life? A lot of people aren't sure about that question, and that's what ultimately leads to unhappiness. Many people don't know their personal worth because they haven't spent enough time alone to figure out what their worth is. So I ask you, do you know what your worth is? Do you know what your value is? Do you know what you bring to each environment that you show up in? Each and every single day of my life, since 2015, however many years ago that was, I have written down in my journal 3 words that I try to walk out each and every single day. Now, these 3 words can change, but ultimately, I try to figure out my value. Like, what will I bring to this very day? So that if today is my last day, I knew that I at least showed up in the manner that I wanted to show up. Did I want to show up with more joy? Did I want to show up with enthusiasm? Did I want to show up with more confidence? Did I want to leave an environment better than which I entered it? And that's always one of my personal goals. It's something that fulfills me is leaving an environment happier and more enthusiastic than I left it. It's like, if you surround yourself by me, I hope that I can cast you a new dream, a new perspective, a new vision, a new idea, maybe some hope and some laughter, maybe some joy and some fun, maybe some lightness, right? Because a lot of people, including myself, take things way too seriously, and life isn't supposed to be taken so seriously. We're supposed to have some fun. But ultimately, my dear friend, is you got to understand that if you want to rebuild your self-worth, you've got to understand what self-worth means and what your self-esteem means. So your self-esteem is your overall sense of personal worth and self-value. So once again, what is your value, and do you believe that you're worth something? And how do you know what your worth is? Well, there's two outlooks to, you can either have a positive self-esteem or a negative self-esteem. So let's talk about that for a minute, okay? When I reflect back on what my low self-esteem looked like, what I looked like, how I felt, how I acted with other people, I oftentimes felt inadequate. I felt oftentimes hopeless. I doubted my ability to figure things out. Like, I doubted that I could get through the difficult time that I was in because I didn't have confidence. I didn't allow myself to learn about how to overcome the current situation that I'm going through. Like, if you want to become an expert, a master at living life to the fullest, to the most fulfilled, to the most happiest, I think you've got to be really good at identifying your problem. And then once you identify your problem, you build a game plan on how you're going to execute and overcome that problem. So it goes, identify the problem, read about the problem and how other people have overcome the problem, right? Study it. How have other people overcome this problem? Because I can't be the only person who's ever faced this problem. And then implement a game plan, like write down a strategy on how you're going to overcome it, and then just take massive action. If you can do that in life, you're going to live a greater quality of life because your obstacles are not going to seem like the size of Mount Everest. They're going to seem to be a size of a molehill, you know? You're going to be able to work yourself into becoming the character you need to be to overcome the obstacles that are stopping you from living a more successful and more fulfilled and more happier life in your life, relationships, homes, businesses, career paths, wherever you're currently at. So right now, when I look back, if you want a greater state of self-esteem, you got to understand that, there's two different sides to self-esteem. There's a negative and a positive. The negative is, like I was talking about, you feel inadequate, you doubt your ability to figure things out, and ultimately you are very critical toward yourself. You don't really speak kindly over yourself. Now, the opposite is if you find someone who has higher self-esteem and higher worth and higher value because they know what they bring to the marketplace, they know what they bring into their home, they know what they bring to a relationship, they know what they bring to the office, they know what they bring into the business, they know what they bring to themselves, well, they have a more positive view on life and toward themselves. They oftentimes believe in their ability to figure things out, meaning that when struggle strikes and chaos rips through our minds and we feel insecure, we feel unsure, we feel uncertainty, we allow ourselves to remember that we were once here, that struggle is a part of life, that this isn't the first time we've experienced this struggle and it's not going to be the last, and we actually got through it. Remember 3 years ago when we got through it? Remember when the father-in-law passed away? Remember when you lost the job? Remember when you failed out of a class? Remember when your marriage fell apart? Remember when your relationship went downhill? Remember your first lost love? Remember your first heartbreak? Remember that time? Well, that time is now in the past. So that proves to me that you've been able to overcome it. You've moved through it. And that should build a sense of confidence within yourself, your ability to figure things out. If you want to build confidence, you got to learn about competency. You got to learn to follow the competent confidence loop. The more you do something, the more you learn about it and do it, the more confident you become at it. So understand that life, the purpose of life is not to live an easy life. It's to create the character you need to be in order to overcome the most difficult times in life, to persevere, to move forward, to lead with more heart, to not close yourself off and identify that life is over when an event happens, no matter the severity of it, to the smallness of losing, your favorite, memorabilia to the largest of losing a lost loved one. We've got to learn how to prevail through those difficult times, right? So someone who has a positive self-esteem is oftentimes has a positive view on themselves. They believe in their ability to figure things out, and they feel more confident because they have some positive self-talk, right? So like that's basically the basics of self-esteem. So you got to understand that if you want to rebuild your self-esteem, you got to understand what your personal worth is and what are your self-values. What value do you bring to yourself, to others, and to the marketplace, to the world? What's your value? What energy do you bring? What's your intention? What character traits do you want to bring into the day? Like my 3 are confident, enthusiastic, and joyful. I try to show up with confidence every single day. I try to show up with enthusiasm every single day, and I try to show up with joy every single day. I just think it fills me up. It makes me feel good because I help other people feel good. And so the 3 things that are oftentimes killing your self-esteem. I think this is vital to talk about. I think it's so important because there's one time that I did not feel like I had strong self-esteem because first things first, I didn't even know what self-esteem meant, okay? I just knew I didn't have it. If there was one thing I was certain of is I didn't have self-esteem. I didn't care that I could hide behind my looks or my body or my income or my friends or the athletic ability that I had. I could hide behind a lot of things, but that didn't make me feel any more loving toward myself. It didn't make me feel any more worthy, and it didn't make me feel enough. Actually, they just were masks. My athletic, my body, everything was a mask for the longest time until I kind of tapped into truer, authentic self-esteem, which was understanding what value I bring to each and every situation and who I am. Now, if you want to understand how to rebuild your self-esteem, you got to understand the first thing that destroys self-esteem. And the first place that everyone's self-esteem is absolutely destroyed, and the number one obstacle is negative self-talk. If you're constantly criticizing yourself, if you're constantly finding yourself talking bad toward yourself, eventually you're going to believe yourself. Now, I know this is common sense. Most people understand that if you're into the personal development, self-help space, that heck, self-talk is vital. But just because you know it doesn't mean you're implementing it. Just because I know to be kind toward myself doesn't mean I'm being kind toward myself. It means that there's this inner critic within my mind that's stopping me from being able to experience a greater level of joy. And the thing is if you want to experience a greater level of joy, then you've got to understand how to defeat your negative self-talk. And that might be another conversation for next week or, another time. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but ultimately, what happens when you start to negatively talk toward yourself is that you start to believe yourself. Over time, consistent negative self-talk will lead to a negative thought, a negative belief, a negative character of yourself. And if no one's speaking good into you, you're not going to feel good about yourself. And I know this sounds simple, but it's more complex than you think because I'm asking you to show up every single day of your life to speak more joyfully, openly, and lovingly toward yourself. To be real with yourself, to tell the truth, to face your demons, to be vulnerable, to speak love and life into you. Are you visualizing a hope-filled future, or are you visualizing a destructive, very pessimistic future? Are you looking into the light, or are you looking into the darkness? What does your daily vision look like? Do you even have a daily vision? But hear me out. Your negative self-talk, it's like the old saying that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words, they will never hurt me. Whew! If words don't hurt you, then you've either closed off your heart and you're stone cold, or you've really done some deep work, some really deep, dark shadow work. You're shadow healing because you understand that other people can't tell you who you are when you've already claimed who you want to be. You can't tell me who I am when I already know who I am. So unless it's in alignment to who I am, I just don't really believe you. I don't take it to heart. I'm like, do you really know me? Do you really know who I am? And if you say that you do, then I would tell you to text me. And if you don't have my number, then you must not really know me, right? So when people speak into my life or speak at my life or speak at me, right, and they say things that are not true and can be hurtful if allowed, I oftentimes sit back and be like, is that true? Most of the time it's not. But I've done enough self-worth work that it's helped me to build my self-esteem to understand that what other people say about me isn't who I need to be or who I have to adopt to be. And you, my friend, don't need to continue to adopt what other people say about you either. It's a matter of you understanding who you are and who you want to be. Okay, so number one, the first obstacle that's killing your self-esteem is negative self-talk. The second big one here, and this comes to no surprise, obviously, is social comparison. It's your ability to, social comparison is about feeling inadequate, right? You're constantly comparing yourself to other people's highlight reels. It's funny that they're on social media nowadays that there's a thing called reels, right? It's basically your highlight reel. And a lot of people continue to compare themselves to where other people are, not knowing their backstory or if they're really hiding behind a lot of masks, paying and putting themselves into debt. Like, what kind of life are they truly living? Is their marriage as joyful as you think that they're portraying? And most of the time, it really isn't. Most of the time, there is some crud underneath. Don't get caught up in the lies. You know what relationships are like. You know what the financial industry is like. You know what work is like. You know what, people don't live that many different types of lives. Lifestyle out there, it's not that much different. We all bleed the same and we all experience the same quality of life and relationships. Now, some may be a little bit better than others, but ultimately, you shouldn't sit down on social media to compare yourself. If you feel inadequate, less confident, less joyful, less inspired when you scroll through social media 4 hours out of your day, maybe, just maybe, you should stop. If you're constantly scrolling on your ex's social media, if you're constantly looking back at your old times, happier times and memories, if you're constantly feeling inadequate and incapable, and maybe you just started a business, maybe you just started out in your career, maybe you just started to invest your 401k, maybe you just started your healing journey, maybe you just started whatever you just started, if you're comparing that to someone else who's been doing this for 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 years, you're always going to feel inadequate, and it's going to stop you from being able to achieve the very life, relationship, love, happiness that you want to fulfill. So it's up to you to coach yourself through those moments. If you're constantly comparing yourself to, oh, well, they just bought that, now I need to buy that. If they just got this, you need to get that. The new TikTok trend, the new, whatever it is that people are pushing out online, it's like, I don't need any of that. I'm pretty content, and everything online makes you feel doesn't make you feel content. Doesn't make you feel at peace. It destroys your inner worth and your inner peace. So you got to stop comparing yourself socially. The third obstacle that we oftentimes face that completely destroys our ability to feel and build our self-esteem is the obstacle of failure and rejection. Okay, they kind of play hand in hand a little bit. So failure oftentimes made me feel like I wasn't capable, less than, right? And rejection oftentimes made me feel not good enough. When I wasn't wanted by, whether it was a boss, an ex, a friend group, when I look back at those moments that I wasn't feeling good enough, accepted enough, it hurt. Rejection's not fun and failure's not fun. But here's a couple things about this, right? So failure can either be looked at as completely like nothing you can change, or failure could be looked at as a lesson. And rejection ultimately means that somebody is not feeling good enough to be at your level, especially if you continue to do the work on yourself that you are wanting to do. If you're trying to grow yourself and people still don't accept you, well, that's on them. You are too much of a good person to beat yourself up over someone's rejection, because they most of the time are rejecting themselves. The people that reject others most of the time reject themselves in some way, shape, or form. So don't beat yourself up too much, okay? Now, ultimately here, my friends, those are the three obstacles that are oftentimes keeping people in a low self-esteem. Number one, negative self-talk. Number two, it is a comparison to others. And number three is failure and rejection. Ultimately, what is up, my guy? Ultimately, if you want to learn how to overcome those very things, well, the first thing that I would tell you to do is reverse. Do the reverse, right? So number one, if it's negative self-talk that's continuously ripping and stripping away from your overall self-esteem. Well, what's the opposite of that? Can you do the reverse of that? Can you hit the reverse card on Uno and reverse it back around? Well, yeah, you can. You can start talking more life into yourself. There's a book called The 15 Laws of Success by Napoleon Hill, and there's a chapter called Self-Confidence, and there's a whole script on how you can, through auto-suggestion, talk to yourself in a more positive light that builds your confidence. So like, listen, I've just done this more times than you. If you feel beat up, it's because you've listened to other people's words and what they had to say about you rather than your own words and what you have to say about you. And they've spoken it long enough and consistently enough that you started to believe them. Now it's time to do that for yourself. Speak it long enough and consistently enough on a day-to-day basis that you become what you say you become, and you feel what you want to feel. The second thing is social comparison. Listen, if you are struggling with social comparison, my challenge for you the next week is just keep your phone away from you. Spend only 30 minutes a day and watch your happiness completely take off, your peace completely increase, your anxiety completely drop, your overall willingness to think about what you want your life to look like to increase. You're going to gain massive clarity. There's a great life out there as soon as you learn to disconnect from all your digital and social distractions. I challenge you to put your phone away for a minute, spend only 30 minutes a day on your social media accounts, and allow yourself to just experience living life again. Man, are you going to feel good about yourself. You're going to reflect on how far you've come, the lessons you've learned, the battles you fought, the battles you won, the wars you won. You're going to tune into the presence of the present moment, and you're going to realize life is a beautiful gift, but you can't really give that to yourself unless you're willing to give up the social distraction and social comparison. And last but not least, my friend, failure and rejection. How do I handle failure and rejection? Well, failure is the only time that I truly fail is if I give up on it completely, okay? And let's say, okay, relationship status. Okay, well, you had to give up on a relationship because they wanted to give up on you. Well, that's not you giving up on it then, right? Okay, so don't think about failure as a failure unless there was no lesson learned. Failure is only a lesson that can be learned. I don't think that you need to tie this notion of like, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not a failure. This is supposed to be a vital moment in your life to teach you something, and you've got to partake in the lesson, to learn the lesson, to experience a greater quality of life. And rejection, listen, everybody rejects themselves. So if somebody's rejecting you, because they're ultimately rejecting themselves. If you're not good enough for someone, level up. If you're not feeling accepted by other people, learn to accept yourself, because your self-validation comes from the acceptance of other people rather than yourself, and that's something that you have to do for your own purpose and your own self so that you can experience a greater level of love, happiness, and fulfillment. My dear friends, today we just got done talking about the 3 things that are oftentimes killing your self-esteem and the things that you can begin to do that can actually help raise your self-esteem. Once again, speak more positively, stop comparing yourself, and once again, understand that failure and rejection is only failure and rejection if you label it as such. These things are common sense, but they're not commonly practiced. I just challenge you to go out there and just implement these 3 things this week. Spend some time with yourself to speak more kindly to yourself. Set aside your phone and social media and stop labeling yourself as a failure and a rejected nobody. God created you, and you are loved, you are worthy, you are enough, you are more than capable. You have everything inside of you that's going to help you reach the next level of love, the next level of happiness, the next level of wealth and financial security, the next level of peace. It's all within yourself. You just got to give yourself some time to be okay with being at peace with what is, and allow yourself to experience that. So my dear friends, my name is Tylerjoestratton, and I am the host of the Honey I'm Home podcast, where it has been my mission to help you significantly improve the quality of life you live by teaching you how to navigate difficult relationships and rebuilding that relationship with yourself so that you can experience a greater happiness within your mind and heart. And if you found this podcast helpful, encouraging, supportive, and/or uplifting, I ask that you share it out with 1, 2, or 3 of your friends, family members, or those that you feel like are in need, because that is what helps this podcast reach more hearts and more homes. And man, I just hope that I can reach more hearts and more homes, because the message here is, at the end of your life, you're going to ask yourself this question: did I live fully? Did I love openly? And did I make a difference? Did I do whatever it took in order for me to live the life that I knew that I was supposed to live?